Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. Amma ba'du fa'uzu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ فَلْيَسْتَجِيبُوا لِي وَلْيُؤْمِنُوا بِي لَعَلَّهُمْ يَرْشُدُونَ. And when my servant asks thee about me, say, I am near. I answer the prayer of the supplicant when he prays to me, so they should hearken to me and believe in me, that they may follow the right way. What if I asked you to speak to a child that was still in the womb of its mother? How would you describe the world you live in today? How would you explain the concept of its own mother? A mother that it cannot see, a mother that it cannot embrace, a mother that it cannot speak to. Well, you would probably say that the mother can be felt, not seen. She is all around us, not in front of us. That we live within her, not beside her. And certainly it is thanks to her that we exist. And you would probably say that if you listen quietly, you can hear her song and feel her protective hands. This is exactly the kind of situation we are living in today. Too many people are unaware of the mother of this universe, the creator, the sustainer. More and more people cannot fathom the idea of a greater being that protects and provides throughout this life and yet is unseen. Therefore, those who merely rely on this world, adamant on its enjoyments, they lose the bigger picture. And more importantly, tragically in fact, they are so blinded by the world around them, they cannot even recognize the God who created us and carries us all. You see, there's a hadith Qudsi that when God created the womb, He said, I am Rahman and you are Rahim. Meaning the womb is created to protect and sustain life, so too is God our protector and our sustainer. It begs the question, how do you prove the existence of God? Now, while other religions claim that by looking at the star, the sun, and the moon, you can prove the existence of God, Islam is very clear that by observing the universe alone, it can only bring you to one conclusion, the possibility of God's existence. But for many of us, the next question we ask ourselves is, why can't we see God? If He exists, we should be able to see Him. Or by connecting data points, mathematically prove the existence of God. But the promised Messiah Islam explains how futile it is to rely solely on empirical evidence. After all, not everything in the universe can be identified through the empirical method. In fact, only 5% of the universe as we know it today is revealed through empirical evidence, by what we can see, feel, and detect. Today's physicists believe that about 95% of the universe is completely hidden to us in dark matter and dark energy. It cannot be physically detected by any of our most sensitive instruments. Its existence has only been deduced from its effect on what we can see and feel. So now the question is, why isn't God discoverable through empirical evidence? And the answer is fairly simple. God isn't discoverable through empirical evidence so that God can remain hidden in order for us to have free will, the ability to have choices. Otherwise, if God chose to show Himself clearly, without any subtlety, if He struck us with lightning every time we denied Him, and if all good and bad things were clearly labeled like expiration tags on grocery items, then mankind would have no choice but to bow down in complete submission. وَلَوْ شَاءَ رَبُّكَ لَآمَنَ مَنْ فِي الْأَرْضِ كُلُّهُمْ جَمِيعًا. The Quran, Holy Quran says, and if thy Lord had enforced His will, surely all who are on the earth would have believed together. You see, here God is telling us through the Holy Quran that mankind would have no opportunity to pursue goodness, growth, and transformation. We would be no different than artificial intelligence, executing exactly what we were programmed to do. It is only because of God's mercy that by giving us free will, we can actively pursue goodness, and we can come to know and experience God at the most personal and individual level. And it is these conscientious choices, this self-propelled pursuit of goodness, growth, and transformation, which makes us human beings and differentiates us from all other creation. Kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrijat linnas. You are the best people raised for the good of mankind. Thus, the last question that comes to mind: how do I find a God who is unseen and subtle? What method do I use if not empirical evidence? And the answer is we find God the same way we seek evidence for any particular phenomenon, through experiences. The experiences of others, which are written down in history books and passed down generation to generation, and our own experiences, which give us knowledge through our own independent pursuit. For example, thousands of years ago, someone learned how to walk and talk, but my infant daughter, she still has to learn how to walk on her own. But as she gets older, she can turn to the experts on concepts such as gravity without having an apple fall on her head. Similarly, when finding God, we can start with the experiences of the experts, namely the prophets, whose stories have been recorded in Scripture and relayed generation to generation. The prophets who strove every moment of their lives in the effort of ta'alluq billah, building a relationship with God. Through them, Allah taught us, if my servant takes one step towards me, I take 2 steps towards him. And if he comes to me walking, I go to him running. And through them, Allah showed us that once we strive in ta'alluq billah, building that relationship with Allah, and it is accepted, then in our distress, He will answer our prayers from every corner. Now, while the world's religions rely on such parables and blind faith for the search of a higher being, today, it is only Ahmadiyyat, the revival of true Islam, that speaks of a living religion, where God can still be seen and heard with the eyes and ears of our very souls. You see the promised Messiah Islam openly declared to a virtually agnostic and atheistic world. Our God is the one who is alive today as much as He ever was. Likewise, He speaks today as He did in the past. He hears as He used to hear. There is no one similar to Him in His attributes. None of His powers ever wane. He is near, yet far, distant, yet close. Now, the experiences of old, the prophets who stood up against the kings, which even the dust of this very earth still remembers, all echo the promise of God since time immemorial. Inni Kareeb, I am near. But these experiences are not found only in the distant shores of the past. They are ever present in these United States. Our cities of iron, cement, and glass bear witness to the American story of the truth of God. That He speaks today as He did in the past, that He hears today as He did in the past, and that His powers never wane. From sea to shining sea, these are the stories of Ahmadis who have experienced the existence and nearness of God. Our journey takes us to Los Angeles, where you can go today and meet a man named Raymond Brown, also known as Rahman Abdul Alim. His early exposure to Islam Ahmadiyya was through the video cassettes of Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Rabi Rahimahullah. They set the groundwork for his belief in God, but something still remained. One evening he was performing his Isha prayer and he was about to finish, and for some odd reason he decided not to and remained sitting there in complete silence while he continued to meditate. All of a sudden he hears a voice, "My son, Ask me for anything and I'll give it to you. Completely shocked, he turned back to see if anybody was there, but he was all alone. He continued to meditate. Once again he heard, my son, let me prove to you I'm in your life. Ask me for anything and I'll give it to you. Again he looked back, but nobody was there. And for the third time he heard it in his right ear. Raymond, my son, ask me for anything and I'll give it to you. Let me prove to you I'm in your life. He at that moment, not knowing why, answered to this voice. God, I've been smoking cigarettes since I was 15 years old. Please remove the taste of tobacco from my mouth. Then he turned right and left to end his prayer with salam, rolled up his prayer mat, and went to bed. That night, Allah heard the wish of His servant who pleaded Him in the covers of darkness, sending His love from the heavens above. Allah answered, Inni Kareeb, I am near. When he woke up the following day, he was utterly astonished to find that the taste of tobacco had indeed left his mouth. And to this day, he never lit another cigarette again. We've all tried getting rid of a bad habit, and we know how difficult it can be. Imagine trying to stop a chemical addiction you've had since adolescence. Then to suddenly wake up one morning completely averse to it. It is nothing short of a medical improbability. But for a sincere supplication to be made in the depths of humility, later to be answered with near impossible accuracy, is a profound example of the existence of God. Likewise, you can go today to Jacksonville, Florida, where you will find a young man named Abdul Hay Thomas. And like many other youth in the West, he fell prey to alcohol and other vices, all leading to the night of his 29th birthday. He says, after spending the day and night celebrating my birthday, I went to bed intoxicated and passed out. Suddenly, I woke up unable to breathe. I was frightened and panicked. That moment changed my life. I was tired of living like this. And so for the very first time, I truly prayed with all my heart, asking God that if He was real, to show me a sign. I continued to pray this over the next few weeks. Soon after, he was introduced to the promised Messiah alayhi salam. He accepted Islam Ahmadiyyat, gave up alcohol, and changed his social circle completely. Yet there was one haunting element of his past which came back in an unimaginable way. You see, in 2003, he was deployed to Iraq. This is before he had embraced Islam. And during this time, his mother became addicted to crack cocaine. He says, I was beyond angry. And I pledged that if I ever met the man who fed my mother's addiction, I would kill him. Now, 10 years later, after embracing Islam, he was heading to London to meet his beloved Khalifa. He says, in 2013, I went to the UK Jalsa, and I met another convert who was also a member of the US delegation. As we started talking, I found out that he was from the same town from where I grew up. He told me how Ahmadiyyat had transformed his life. As before, he was living a life of crime as a drug dealer. At that moment, he says, as I sat with this Ahmadi brother, I knew that he was the one who had been selling crack cocaine to my mother. To confirm, he sent the picture to his mother, and she said, yes, it is him, but he looks so different. Before, he looked like darkness, but now he looks like light. What will he do now? He vowed to kill this person. But now he finds himself praying shoulder to shoulder with him behind Hazrat Khalifatul Masih al-Khamis, Ayyadullah Ta'ala bin Nasr Aziz. What an unimaginable predicament. He then decided to pray. He says, Oh Allah, the Almighty, enable me to forgive this person who I had desired to kill. And the Lord of the heavens heard his prayer, whispering to his grieving heart, Inni Kareeb, I am near. He then says, it took some time and prayers, but ultimately I completely forgave him with all my heart. I spoke to him and he accepted what he had done and asked for my forgiveness. Since then, we have taken bath twice together at the hand of Hazrat Khalifatul Masih. Only God can transform hearts like this. It reminds me of a saying or a couplet. गैर मुमकिन को ये मुमकिन में बदल देती है ऐ मेरे फलसफियों ज़ोरे दुआ देखो तो. This transforms the impossible into the possible. Oh, my dear philosophers, just look towards the power of prayer. Again, you can go today to Baltimore, not too far from here, and meet an American doctor named Agha Shahid Khan. He was slated to lead a team of medical professionals to a humanitarian mission to the Marshall Islands, as per the instructions and approval of Hazrat Khalifatul Masih al-Khamis, Ayyadullah bin Asal Aziz. He himself is a neurosurgeon, but Marshall Islands, being unequipped for brain surgery, or any surgery for that matter, he was not expecting to see the inside of an operating room. Yet when he arrived, news quickly spread of a brutal attack between two Marshallese men at a bar. Apparently, when the fighting ensued, one of the men took a screwdriver and stabbed it into the other person's head. It was lodged 3 inches into his brain. On any other day, the man would have been sent off island for some sort of treatment. But hearing about our medical team, the hospital crew frantically ran to the masjid and spoke to our neurosurgeon, asking me if he could do something. And the doctor reminded them that there was nothing there remotely close to what would be needed to save this man. A screwdriver lodged into the brain is critical, and the surgery even more risky. Anything could happen. So the patient's flight was scheduled to the next flight off the island, which was in a few days. But the hospital pleaded the doctor to reconsider despite the impossibility of any kind of operation. But he went to bed that night, anticipating that he would at least stabilize this man so he could reach Hawaii safely for a chance at surgery. That night, the heavens opened and the Almighty said, Inni Kareeb, I am near. In complete awe, the doctor saw the most vivid dream of him performing the surgery successfully on this Marshallese man. He saw the man on the operating table, the doctor prepped and ready for surgery, even with the lack of equipment, and the surgery commencing with every single step needed to save this man laid down in unforgettable detail. He spent the whole night in surgery, and when he awoke from his dream, he was utterly convinced that not only did the surgery happen, but it happened successfully. Moments later, the hospital called and asked about his decision, and he immediately told them that he knew exactly what to do, and he would proceed with the operation. This became the first and only brain surgery ever done in the Marshall Islands. I too was a witness to this beautiful sign of Allah. The man was saved, the screwdriver dislodged, and all of his functions were intact as if nothing had happened. There's a hadith where God says, O son of Adam, I became sick and you did not visit me. And he will answer, how will I visit you? You are the Lord of all the worlds. And Allah Almighty would say, did you not know that one of my servants became sick and you did not visit him? Alas, had you visited him, you would have found me with him. After all, it is by serving the creation that we can meet the Creator. Again, you can go today to Hawaii, where a woman lives named Khadija, and for nearly 7 years of her marriage, she was not able to bear any children. Prayers were the only thing left. And after absolute desperation, the couple decided to meet Hazrat Khalifatul Masih al-Khamis, Ayyadullah bin Asal Aziz, in London. In the mulaqat, they requested beloved Hazur to pray that they should be blessed with children. And the mulaqat was quite ordinary, until all of a sudden when Hazur said, Har saal mujhe milne aaya karo, aur agle saal bhi aana, aur bachcha bhi lana. Visit me every year, and next year you should also come and bring the child. What an absolute shock. After 7 years, walking out of this room, after 7 years of bearing no children and being told that not only will you have a child, but you will have a child this very year, and not only this year, you will bring that child to meet Hazrat Khalifatul Masih al-Khamis. Yet when the heartfelt desires of the supplicant are cast to heaven, combined with the prayers of the Khalifa himself, the ambassador of God on earth, then surely the Almighty sends down His decree as a balm to heavy hearts. Inni Kareeb, I am near. And so Allah blessed them with a child that very year, and today they are blessed with two beautiful children. I tell you, if you go to New York City today, you will find a man named Ali. And like all other refugees, he left his family behind to cross oceans and continents in hopes of a peaceful and secure life for them all. Initially, he was promised a 6-month processing fee for his immigration papers in 2019. But the pandemic hit. Laws began to change. It is now April of 2022, not too long ago, and his family still had not come. In utter desperation, he wrote a letter on April 22nd, 2022, to Hazrat Khalifatul Masih al-Khamis, Ayyadullah Ta'ala bin al-Aziz. He said, "O Hazur, show a sign for me and my family." Now, he had no way of sending the letter, so he decided to go to the mosque in order to fax this letter, only to find that the fax machine was broken. It didn't work. Utterly desperate, with no hope anywhere, he began to pray to Allah. He says, "I have heard numerous people say that they were not able to send a letter to Hazur, and yet their letter reached him through the angels. And Allah heard the prayer of their Khalifa in their favor. O Allah, I cannot send this letter, but the angels can carry it for me. Show me that those people who made this claim were true, and accept this prayer from me." It was a cry of a faithful servant who, when standing in front of man, he remembered the might of his Lord. It was the cry of a faithful servant who, when standing in front of his Lord, remembered he was but a man. That was it. The letter was never sent. A few days later, on April 25th, he called his wife to speak to her as usual. And in the middle of the call, she happened to check the immigration website, which showed an update to the status and that the immigration process was, in fact, approved. This was a surprise because once more the heavens broke open and the Almighty said, "Inni Kareeb, I am near." There in clear letters was a notification that their family's immigration had been accepted and they should proceed for interview. But that wasn't it. Allah desired to manifest Himself even more. The man went online and also saw that his green card had been issued. But again, that wasn't it. Allah desired to manifest Himself even more. When finally the green card had arrived, he looked at the date of issue and it said April 22nd, 2022. The very day he wrote his letter to Hazur requesting for prayers. I tell you, there is no doubt when the heartfelt desires of the supplicant are cast to heaven, mountains are made to move. So now I challenge you to search for God. You were given intelligence and free will for a reason. You are unique in your ability to pursue goodness, growth, and transformation for a reason. What is that reason? Is it merely shiny cars, designer clothes, and heaps of money? Is your reason for being here merely the enjoyments of life? Or maybe, just maybe, do you think that if you are quiet enough, reflect enough, you will see that the world is just another womb for something bigger? That maybe between the folds of day and night there is a greater being, continually loving, guiding, and protecting us all? Do you think it's possible that the beauty around us is just the reflection of the one truest form of beauty? You see, the promised Messiah ﷺ has said, a person's love of wealth or offspring or wife or his soul being attracted towards a musical voice are all indications of his search for the true beloved God. So I challenge you to search for the true beloved in every valley and on every peak. The experiences of those long ago prophets is just part of the tapestry of human experience. Take control, use your free will, and make your mark like those before you. Become the best creation for the good of mankind. But how do you start? The promised Messiah ﷺ gives a beautiful analogy. He says our hearts are like the Kaaba. And just as the Holy Prophet Muhammad ﷺ entered the Kaaba and physically destroyed each and every idol with his own hands, so too do we have to enter our hearts and cleanse them of all the idols we have placed in it. Once it is cleansed, we can fill our hearts with the unity of God, just as the Kaaba was filled. So I tell you, eliminate the false gods in your heart. Take hold of the one true compass to God Almighty. That is our beloved Hazur. And in turn, He will guide you to look past what is under your noses and listen for a more beautiful song, a greater love, the love of God. Then when your hearts are filled with that love, raising your hands in supplication of mercy and grace, the heavens will break open. The Lord of the worlds will answer, Inni Kareeb, I am near. Wa akhiru da'wana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alamin.
Islam Ahmadiyyat. The next speech is